Today I'm going to be talking about motivation and data, and this is quite a passion of mine, so I'm really glad to be kicking off today's event with this. So motivation is the key to successful marketing. Well, actually, it's not just the key to successful marketing, it's the key to success, and more specifically, results-orientated goals or targets. And that's because motivation is at the core of everything that we do. It's what gets us out of bed in the morning. And more specifically, it determines what we do, what we buy. So the car we drive, the career that we have, whether we buy a book, a course. And it all comes down to the emotional side and the motivators within. So understanding this is the very first step of defining a content-driven strategy that will deliver results. Now, how I like to look at motivation is really split between two sides. So you've got, from one side, you've got the brand, and from the other side, you've got the audience. So from a brand perspective, that's what are you trying to achieve? What does success look like for you? And how are you going to measure this? So what are your goals, your targets, or your KPIs? And then really important is your audience. So what are their needs? What are their pains? What do you need to do to add value to them? Now, understanding what motivates our audience and what our content will trigger within them is an important first step to defining a content marketing strategy that actually delivers. Now, I'm sure in your career you've probably come across really flashy campaigns that look amazing but don't actually deliver and completely fail when it comes to delivering a return on investment, whether that's TV ads, content campaigns, or any form of marketing. Now, that's because it's not based on data and having validated that initially. Another angle of looking at this is from a creative aspect. So you come up with a great idea, but it completely misses the mark and doesn't actually speak to your audience because you're not understanding your audience. Now, this is a campaign with Co-op, and unfortunately, they really missed the mark and had a big backlash. So be a good egg, treat your daughter for doing the washing up. Now, obviously, they could have said your son's daughter, your family to doing the washing up, or potentially something different. So this, is something that it's a creative idea, but that hasn't been born out of data. Now, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. Now, I really like this quote because this means something to me. And it's not what I think, it's not what my team think. It actually is about what does the data tell us, or how can we translate this into a content campaign that actually delivers. Now, the way we look at things is actually to use the data, to mine it, to look for insights, and do our research to inform our strategy. And once we've outlined what that strategy should be, it's about validating our ideas before we actually go ahead and spend money, time, or resource into actually creating the campaigns. We want to validate first that it's going to work. So this is a good way of looking at data. So what can it tell you and how can it inspire? So using data to create really interesting stories, creative assets or campaigns. So maybe stories are just data with a soul. Now, one way of doing this, and there are so many tools that you can use to gather this kind of information, but this is just a handful. So obviously keyword research with keyword tool IO, and looking at what are the users saying? What are the audience asking? What are they typing in? So what are their pains? What are the questions that they have? BuzzSumo, looking at content that's actually already receiving traction and that's getting engagement. Competitor analysis, specifically looking for what have your competitors done. And then outside of your industry, what are other people doing that's getting engagement? But what's really good here is if you look for the opportunities or the gaps. Where can you add your specific angle to solve that question or to answer your audience better? And then social media analysis as well. So what is already receiving traction? So what does your audience want and need? And what are they engaging with? And where are their opportunities? So this slide looks a little bit busy, but this is essentially how we do this internally. So the next stage really for us is understanding all of those points. So the personas, your audience, looking at the search data, the social data, and taking all of that and trying to turn that into a campaign. And once we've got that right at the beginning, looping it back to the motivation and the data, we want to uncover what the KPIs or what our target goals will be. So we do this by overlaying our campaign ideas with the user journey. So we've got awareness, consideration, purchase, service, and loyalty. Now, as you'll see, within each of these different stages, there'll be different KPIs that more closely relate to that particular stage. So what we've found is that when you come up with a creative idea, it can more specifically touch on a specific user journey stage. And especially if you're doing a holistic marketing campaign involving perhaps even more of the journey and more channels, you can just make sure that specific to whichever content campaign that you're working on, you are specifically targeting different KPIs. So if you don't know what you're targeting or what their motivation is, how can you get it right? I don't believe you can. I believe it's really fundamental that you understand what you're trying to achieve and you understand what your audience is looking for. So it's like investing in a website specifically to drive sales, but you don't have a buy button, or you don't have tracking, or no data capture, or no contact information. You just wouldn't do it. So from my perspective, it really needs to be rooted in motivation and data. I just want to touch on some of the potential challenges that I think you might be coming here today to look for a strategy that solves it. So potentially it's about moving away from a heavy reliance on paid search, or perhaps that's suiting you really well, but you also want to grow your organic search. Increasing engagement. I know we're going to talk on this a little bit later. Perhaps in this really clouded environment, and it's really hard to get cut through, you're looking to increase engagement with your audience. Perhaps you have siloed marketing channels and you're looking to have a holistic marketing strategy, or attracting a new audience. Well, all of these areas can be encompassed by a solid content marketing strategy, and more specifically by understanding first the motivation and the data behind it. So I want to challenge you today to go away and to really put motivation and data at the foundation of your content marketing. So I'm hoping that after today's session, you'll really be inspired to look for that motivation, both from yourself as a brand, but also your audience. Thank you very much.